Hey, everybody. I am super excited today for this chat around emerging technologies and innovation with Microsoft, a company that's top of mind all the time these days. Nick, how are you?
Very good, Evan. Thank you so much for having us. Looking forward to the chat.
Looking forward to the chat as well. Before that, maybe introduce yourself, your team within Microsoft, obviously a big company, and your mission. What are you guys focused on?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. I am Nick McGuire. I'm a director of product management in our strategic missions and technologies division. I can cover that area off of Microsoft in just a second, no doubt. I primarily focus in two areas for us in SMT, or Strategic Missions and Technologies. We love our acronyms. The first is around product management for what we see as our next horizon or strategic incubation products. And the second stream is very much about customer engagement. Looking at our future innovations and focusing primarily on getting customers starting to think about, starting to plan, but ultimately to focus on getting them into a foothold in a number of these emerging technology areas and through our co-innovation program. So we think of a lot of these future technologies in the motion of co-innovation, where we collaborate very deeply with our customers, as they apply and can accelerate their businesses as well. So that's the core part of my role, and obviously I can cover off our division, as and when.
Wow, fantastically interesting. And tell us a little bit about your background, which is also interesting, and your journey as a technology analyst to becoming a director at Microsoft.
Yeah, I guess you could argue that I didn't come through your traditional path. So I'm in a corporate engineering function in Microsoft. Yes, you're absolutely right. I spent 20 plus years as a technology analyst, a CIO advisor, across a number of different areas, but largely helping customers think about and deploy emerging technologies. I started in mobile, and
Mm.
then I evolved into AI back in 2013, 2014. And yeah, I was brought into Microsoft around, largely through that work, in effect. And it was interesting because at that time, say 2015, 2016, when I started really looking at kind of the next phase for AI, I was having some really engaging conversations with Microsoft, particularly in the research side.
Mm.
And as a technology analyst, I was trying to get those observations and understanding of those research projects from the market as a whole. And Microsoft is very, on the front line of some of that, those conversations. So it was a no-brainer for me to come in and join them and focus on this area, which has now evolved since I've been at Microsoft into the more kind of formal process of incubation, and I'll cover a little bit about that because that's a key part of the conversation. But yeah, I started my career as I was in business, and I
Mm.
evolved into technology and cut my chops, so to speak, I guess, on tech and a lot of the disciplines through my roles as an analyst over the years. So yeah, it's been a very difficult transition in terms of not necessarily being on the usual path, but it's been a fantastic ride along the way.
Sounds like it. Yeah, well, change is good, and always be disrupting yourself. That's what they say. And
Absolutely.
this team, the Strategic Missions and Technologies Division, sounds like something out of Star Trek or science fiction. But what are the key mission statements there, responsibilities and challenges within that team, which sounds like really fascinating.
Yeah, it's got a great title, doesn't it? Well, basically, there's method to that madness. So, Strategic Missions and Technologies is a fairly new organization in the life cycle of Microsoft. It was set up roughly around the back end of 2021 as our formal business acceleration arm. The decision was made based at that point to put together and ring fence a couple of key growth areas for the organization. With the view that these could be the next billion, 10 billion plus businesses for Microsoft. And so here's kind of where the title comes into play. So there's probably four key domains that we're currently looking at from a acceleration and incubation perspective. So all the work we do with telco operators worldwide, that includes migrating them to the cloud, but also running modern network infrastructure on Azure, such as 5G, for example. And that extends into some of the work we can do, particularly with private 5G as an extension of our hybrid cloud and edge strategy capabilities. So that's one domain. The second domain, and this is where the missions comes into play, is with space. So all the work we do in space sits with us. That includes satellite connectivity, in partnership with a lot of the satellite providers across the world, but as well as from a data perspective. So from what we call Earth observation, and this is where our planetary computer, within Microsoft sits within our organization. And so the other two pieces are quantum computing. So all the work we do there in terms of our hardware roadmap for building scalable quantum machines. And then lastly, as a lighthouse industry, all the work we do with the US federal government. So that includes everything from migrating departments and agencies with the US federal government to the cloud. But there's also a lot of kind of Horizon 2 co-innovation work we do with institutions like DARPA, et cetera. So, and that's primarily in the area of quantum computing. So we sit organizationally in strategic missions. I guess the best way to think about it as, the nexus between our foundational and long-term research on one hand and Microsoft Research, and then our existing solution portfolio on the other. So sitting in between those areas of Microsoft, our essential charter is to move things out of research and project basis into, what we see as the next phase of scalable products. And you'll not be surprised that, we do this and we try to accelerate these technologies for our customers across the horizons. And we apply things like the McKinsey Horizon Framework to how we think about this effort and this incubation strategy all up. So that's the reason. And missions is obviously a term reflected in the context of space. But yeah, think of it as our formal incubation arm.
That's fantastically interesting. And talking about getting technology into the market and making it very impactful, something Microsoft knows a thing or two about. What do you see having the most impact? Beyond AI, which is, obviously on our top of mind day in, day out these days. What do you see some of the big tech impacts having with your incubations over the next year or two? Do you look longer term as far as business impact?
Yeah, we as I said, we've got kind of we apply a framework across what we see as kind of the horizons, which is a combination of kind of Horizon 1 technology, which is very much technology that's real and here today, through to kind of Horizon 2 and Horizon 3 scenarios, which can be anywhere between kind of 2 to 5 years and beyond, depending on the nature of that opportunity. And, within the context of how we think about the all up next phase of our portfolio, particularly, Azure itself, we think of these in the context of what are the big areas of investment that we're making at Microsoft that we think are core to shaping the cloud's future. So we talk a lot about this future of the cloud, and it doesn't encapsulate the entirety of all the different areas of where the cloud will evolve to over that 3 to 5 year and beyond timescale. But what it does rather is kind of focus us in terms of how we think about investment and acceleration. And so really within that, there's kind of 3 areas that we look at. The first is basically how we can expand the cloud and what are some of the emerging technologies that are going to kind of reframe how we think about putting compute into tough to reach areas and ultimately getting compute closer to the problems we need to solve. And that is very much, in the area of this next generation connectivity, where technologies like 5G, as well as space and satellite, are going to really help us achieve some of those aims. So that's kind of one area. The second area, and you touched on this, is around how we think about AI. AI is absolutely, as we know, a very core motion at this current moment of time, particularly generative AI, and how we think about technologies attached to our products, as well as how we make the availability of our AI models, as well as the infrastructure accessible as APIs and services. So we're very much in that kind of thinking about AI as a platform arena. And so what is beyond that? And really there's kind of two critical areas where we see AI evolving. The first is in the area where we can see, generative AI really enhance our domain expertise and accelerate kind of areas of expertise in organizations that we just really haven't enabled with AI today. So one particular area is the area of Earth observation. And this is obviously supported by what we're wanting to achieve now with planetary computer from an incubation and acceleration perspective. So that's one area where we see the domain acceleration. And the next area is really focused on, and it connects to kind of this third area of what we're focusing on from an incubation perspective, but it's the area of accelerated discovery and R&D. And that's, we're starting to see AI evolve into the area of science. And clearly that's going to en route us, we believe, into the next computational shift. And that's really a third critical area where quantum computing is going to come in to kind of shape the future for us. So it's those three buckets, if you like: the future of connectivity, where AI is going to take us, and then this third area around computation and the future of computing as we evolve into quantum, and particularly quantum at scale. So meaningful quantum computing down the line is really what is focusing our attention right now from an incubation perspective. And there's a lot within that, but there's a number of key emerging technology areas that are part of our projects and proof of concept work, as well as, now very, very close motions with customers to get them, onboarded into these areas today as well. And that's a big part of our charter.
Oh, fantastically interesting. And you're out there doing a ton of education and sharing insights and roadmaps that look super exciting. You did a new series of webinars on the future of cloud. Of course, Azure is everywhere these days in every industry. What's the big idea behind that, and some of the content you're putting out with IEEE, I saw, and many other really interesting partners?
Yeah, thanks, Evan. That's great to hear. And obviously, we're really keen to have conversations with people like yourselves, of course, as well as customers all over the world, to help them start to think about and plan around these emerging areas. And the good news with this is that this isn't just kind of long-term interesting technology trends. Like, we absolutely have motions and resources and solution accelerators to get companies moving today around these areas. But part of the process, of course, to your point earlier, was to kind of lift the kimono a little bit and show organizations some of the work that we're doing with customers. And one, obviously an example of this is some of the webinar series that we're running. So it very much looks at these core incubation areas, some of the key disruptive technologies, but above all, the scenarios, the customer scenarios that we're working on that are directionally relevant to where we feel the cloud is going to take us over the next 3 to 5 years and beyond. So it's a 5-part series. I have the super amazing privilege of being humbling privilege, actually, as well, given the audience and the guests that I have on the episode. But I'm the host for the 5-part series. So I'm joined by external experts, as well as some of Microsoft's leading experts, from all over the world, to really share these perspectives on these promising technologies. And of course, they span a number of the areas from 5G, space, quantum computing, and more. And really, what we're aiming to do is to share learnings. We really want customers to overcome some of the challenges, because there are challenges with some of these next phase technology areas. So we're discovering that whilst the topic of kind of what's next, and possibly even what's beyond generative AI, is a really is a hot one, and we're seeing more and more people wanting to have those conversations. We fully recognize that in today's climate there are challenges for customers, and that's ultimately what this series is aimed at targeting, is to provide hopefully some of this valuable insight to help customers advance some of these areas.
Fantastic. One of the areas of particular interest to me is 5G, where I've sort of grown up from 0G to 5G in the industry over 30 years. And many people aren't aware that Microsoft is quietly a kind of a 5G powerhouse. You have the entire software stack of 5G and beyond, and a lot of the core technologies. Talk about why 5G and the intersection of cloud and 5G is so important for both enterprises and service providers.
Yeah, it's a great conversation to have, and obviously we can only kind of scratch the surface here. Partially we haven't spoken quite a lot, I guess, in the past about kind of the role that 5G will play in the future, and we're looking to have those conversations now. I mean, obviously, there's a couple of key kind of things around 5G that are really useful from our point of view. I mean, the first is that it really does open up a lot of new scenarios particularly for developers. It's a software-defined architecture, as you know. So what that means is that, certainly we're seeing this today, but certainly over time as well, where, you can communicate and interact with the network a lot more effectively using the enhanced APIs from 5G. And this will allow for a lot more control over the experiences that developers create through this trend towards, increasingly distributed applications on one hand, but also the requirement for important things like latency, security, quality of service to open up some of these scenarios, particularly for AI. And that's where we're starting to see 5G play a role, whether that be in the public infrastructure space. And of course, the operators are critical partners as part of this vision for the future of cloud. They are, in our view, critical in basically hand in glove with us in creating this vision for the future of the cloud. And so part of it is obviously, from the operator side, opening up those networks and bringing in new innovation there from a developer and application perspective. And then the other side of the equation is working with the infrastructure providers and the radio providers as critical partners of ours as well, to enable the private network space. And we're seeing a lot more of that those types of scenarios open up across a range of industries, utilities, manufacturing, government and public sector, et cetera. And there is clearly where we start to see a lot more requirement for this capability around connectivity in the edge. And that is, part of that vision for us in terms of the expanding cloud. So what we're seeing with 5G is it's slow because it's a process of rollout and awareness on the infrastructure across the world. But we're really seeing some significant pockets of innovation from a number of different customers in a number of different industries now for 5G. So we're only going to see this accelerate as we move forward.
Oh, fantastically interesting. Can't wait to hear more. And, I'm a space geek, like many of us, following space news, space tech, space IT with great interest. And, it's such a ripe opportunity, this whole space economy, and lots of very, very practical use cases here on Earth. If you're not aware, go online, there are a number of apps you can use to find a photo, high resolution photo of your town, your business, your property, your house, like almost in real time via various space services. Just a huge big data and analytics opportunity. But what do you see as your interest in the space economy at Microsoft?
Yeah, and it's one of my I think privately fascinating areas of development as well. I get super excited by the advancement of this area, and yeah, I mean you highlighted it. I think there's kind of two core elements to it. On one hand, it's part of that expanding edge. So we don't think of the cloud's expansion strictly around terrestrial networks and the advancement of that arena, accelerated by 5G. Like we do think of space as being critical in this sense. And our strategy and our capabilities there are very much oriented around, we're not unlike some of our peers that are launching satellites, Microsoft isn't in the business of launching satellites. We want to partner with the major, providers in the industry to enable that connectivity of the future. One example there, one such partner is Starlink, and we're all very familiar with that organization. Just to give you a bit of a flavor, they are currently launching satellites at a rate of 120 a month at this current moment of time. So they expect their low Earth orbit constellation network to accelerate dramatically over the next number of years. And we do absolutely see the satellite capability being a core aspect to how we think about the cloud in the future. In many respects, we should have a very, very rapid direct connection anywhere on the planet into Azure. And we think space is going to be a big aspect of that in the future. And the second stream is what you rightly said, is around data and insights. And this is where our planetary computer at Microsoft is coming into play as well. We've got close to 70 petabytes now of geospatial environmental data as part of our planetary computer. And the range of scenarios, particularly in the context of sustainability and risk assessment, that we're seeing customers utilize this data for today is quite dramatic and phenomenal. We're only just scratching the surface on organizations taking advantage of the data that's coming from space. But yet, at the same time, we're over tens of thousands of customers are using this capability from us at this current moment of time. So I think it's those two areas where we see real progression of space, both from a connectivity perspective, enabling this dispersed and distributed cloud of the future, as well as the insights perspective. And that's really folding into, the corporate sustainability efforts that we're seeing worldwide now from our customers.
Oh, fantastically interesting and exciting stuff. On the quantum side, we see these breakthroughs happening every week, every month with more qubits. The opportunity is really almost here. And how do you think about the quantum space? And, there's lots of excitement on the hardware side and number of qubits and these exciting sci-fi looking computers, but there's a lot of work to be done on the software side and applications too. I imagine that's where you're really focused.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's one that requires quite a lot of time and detail to go through. But I think at a top line level, fully agree. We believe that some of the biggest challenges, scientific challenges that we have ahead of us, climate change, food insecurity, at the core, we think in solving them is going to come down to the fact that quantum computing is ultimately going to help us, enable, solutions to these critical challenges. Largely because at the heart of these challenges is chemistry and molecular simulation, and when you think about new material design, all these challenges can really be driven and solved by how we think about modeling things like molecules, and how do we run simulations at scale and at speed. And we think that quantum over time is, because it inherently speaks the language of nature, will be best suited to solve some of these particularly big simulation challenges of the future. So our strategy in quantum has been very clear from the beginning. Like, we're on a journey, and there's a roadmap towards building a scalable quantum computer. That's a 5-year plus journey, because what we're doing is we're focusing on arguably a new kind of physics that is required to create a new kind of qubit. And this is what we call a topological qubit. And these qubits are going to be smaller, they're going to be faster, they're going to be more controllable. But in order for you to solve meaningful challenges like the ones that we're covering here, today's quantum machines just aren't powerful enough. At best, we've got machines that are at the couple hundred level or hundreds of level in terms of qubits. It is changing quite dramatically on an ongoing basis. But we believe you need 1 million plus to solve qubits, to solve some of these challenges. So how do you build scalable quantum machines, with that type of framework involved? And that's really the core focus of our effort. But I will say that the key thing, and this is where we're really reaching out with customers now, is that we have now steps for customers to start to get going with quantum today, particularly in the areas of, as I was highlighting earlier, chemistry and material science. So at Ignite a couple of weeks ago, Satya talked a lot about Azure Quantum Elements. It's a new solution for researchers in chemistry and material science that can use classical computing, dedicated AI models to run molecular simulations. We've got a co-pilot in that, so you can use natural language to run those simulations. And that's very much done in a classical computing sense, but we also have the ability to experiment on existing hardware from our partners today. And that solution will also take customers through into our quantum hardware and roadmap in the future as well. So there's tangible things, and again, it comes back to this strategy of hybrid, right? We believe that quantum will coexist alongside classical computing, high performance computing, and dedicated AI, particularly as we think about these challenges, these simulation challenges in the future. And so that solution is a very good example of that strategy coming to life today for customers. So absolutely encourage customers to reach out to me if they want to take a look at that, because it's available right now, and ready for customers to use in its private preview.
Oh, fantastically interesting. Well, I could keep asking questions all morning, but I know you do have a job to focus on. Any advice for upcoming sort of aspiring leaders in the tech industry who want to get into innovation and technology management? You've done a fantastic job. What would you say to those folks?
Yeah, I would say for those that are interested in these areas, certainly become practitioners, become early adopters, motion towards first of all, leverage the capabilities that we have to onboard and to get you moving. We've got a range of different assets and tools here, from customer briefings through to the technology and solution accelerators that we've got. For example, if you even think about quantum of the future, like this co-pilot in Azure Quantum, you can generate code now in a matter of seconds using natural language. So there's new tools now that are available to get you onboarded and get you moving quickly. And plus, there's assets and resources that we can leverage. So I think that would be the first thing, would be just to start to practition around it, start to build plans and strategies, and we can absolutely help with that. But the key, of course, is to get moving, and that for us is why we're encouraging everyone to start to think about and plan today, because these technologies, admittedly, perhaps some are a little bit further out than others may like. But many of these areas are available today, and they will become standard before we think, and I think that's part of the motion that we're undertaking here.
Oh, fantastically good advice. And thank you so much for all the insight you share. What are you looking forward to as we close out the year? You finished with trips and travel and events and industry stuff, or do you have a few more things on your radar?
Yeah, I'm finished, thankfully, for traveling. You can see behind me here, I think this side, you've got the Christmas tree up. So perfect time of year to kind of just relax for a little bit. But it'll start up in the new year. We've got a number of things cooking early part of the new year in these areas where we're super excited in terms of what's coming, particularly in the area. I think first up will be in planetary computers. So we've got a number of announcements there of that capability going into preview into Azure. So stay tuned for those. I think that's going to be pretty exciting in the early part of the new year. And then who knows, things change so quickly in these areas on a quarterly basis. So maybe we'll have to check back in a quarter or so.
We will indeed. Well, I would welcome that. And thank you so much for the time and generosity with your sharing insights. And thanks everyone for watching. Reach out to Nick. He's a power player on social media, on X and LinkedIn. I'm sure he'd love to engage. Thanks so much, Nick. Thanks everyone.
Thank you, Evan. And thanks everyone again. Merry Christmas.